In this lesson, I'm going to walk you guys through how to start your figure drawings using a photograph reference. What you're going to need is one or more photographic references printed out, 3 pencils. You guys know by now I typically only use a 2B, a 4B, and a 6B. Today I'm probably just going to use the 2B or the 4B. You will eventually need one piece of tracing paper. If you're in my class, I will provide that. And then drawing paper. And if you have a bumpy surface, like this table has some texture to it, you don't want to lay your drawing paper directly on the board. You'll want to have something else underneath it, either more drawing paper or something smooth. All right, let's get started. So first thing, when choosing what image to pick, you guys know that for this project I wanted minimal clothing. Okay, so we are trying to draw the human form. We're not trying to draw a ton of clothing and drapery right now. Okay, so athletes and dancers can be great subjects to print out for this. I don't want lots of bulky, heavy clothing, because that lesson's coming. We're going to talk about how to do drapery and draw cloth and wrinkles and all that more later. Right now we need to be able to master understanding the human form and how to translate what we see onto the paper and get the bones and the skeleton and the muscles looking accurate. All right, now having said all that, you got to choose a picture. Here's a couple examples I have up on Google Sites that we've been using as reference to practice from. A couple of these are better than others for this project though, when you're ready to finally do a more finished drawing. I printed this one out at first because I thought it was very striking and I love it. The problem is, there's multiple problems going on here. One, the picture is so fuzzy and grainy, so I can't see a whole lot of the details. Like when we want to try and emphasize the subtle details in the muscles, I'm going to have to kind of wing it. I'm not going to really be able to see enough detail. So that's one negative thing. And then the second negative is this looked better in color than printed black and white, because even though I love the drastic contrast of the very pale skin to the very dark skin, in some ways this is too pale for being able to define things and draw it accurately. It's going to be very hard. And then this printed so dark that now I can't see individual shadows and highlights on the muscles. It almost looks like a black and white silhouette. So this has got lots of problems for this particular project. So that's not going to be an ideal photograph. It can be great for practicing those gesture drawings, and that's what we were using it for. But as a finished project, you need to find something more along the lines of one of these two options. All right, so what we've got here, I like this basketball player, and even though it's also a fuzzy, grainy picture, you can still see enough detail to work with, and there's not too much clothing obscuring limbs to the point that I wouldn't allow this for a project. This would be fine. But the problem we have here is that there's awkward angles and foreshortening, and if you are not comfortable with that yet, you may not want to choose a project where the limbs are going away from the camera at strange angles, so that when you're drawing this, it's going to just be more frustrating to you unless you are one of my Art 2 students or beyond and you feel more comfortable and confident. I wouldn't choose something where body parts are moving either towards or away from the camera. All right. This is a great example, and I'm going to use this one for the demo. This, you can see it, hopefully clear enough. It's a very crisp, clean, clear picture. It's got all the detail we need. Printed in black and white, it has high contrast. It's got some cool lines and drama and impact. It would make a beautiful drawing, standalone drawing on its own. I'm not going to have to guess at where things are and what's going on with all the little details because I can see them very clearly. There's also not any real foreshortening. Yes, this leg is a little more forward and coming out towards me a little bit, but it's not so dramatic that it's going to confuse me and make drawing it frustrating. So this type of thing is a great example where everything's pretty much on like the same plane of motion, and it's a clear, crisp, detailed picture with high contrast, meaning lots of light areas, lots of dark areas. So we're going to use this as the example. All right, so the first thing, I need to sort of match that angle of what's going on here. And I have a hard time talking and doing this at the same time, but I'm going to try. All right. Some tips of how to match angles. You take your pencil and you line it up with the angle on the photograph. And then you just carefully move your hand over here and you draw lines at that angle so that you know everything matches. So I'm looking at her right leg here in the back. Ooh, and I got pretty good, yep, the angle is pretty much right on there. Okay, this is nearly parallel to the floor, so that's good, that'll be easy. Okay, I'm looking at this arm now, and yes, I will move my pencil any which way I need to, okay? You do not have to hold the pencil just like this, or like these weird ways I see everybody doing it these days. I don't know who taught you all to write. This is the proper way, more like this. Okay. But for drawing purposes, you know that a lot of times when we're sketching, artists will hold it a looser like this, and that can help you make these kind of marks. Oh, look at my angles, right? More like that. Okay. Now let's see. You notice that this is a nice picture. I like this picture. This is gonna be fun. Okay. Her upper arm here is nearly completely straight up and down and matches the same angle as the leg. Okay, but it's a little, well, maybe not. It's slightly forward, slightly further back, but just a hair, not much. Okay. Now you can see I'm not worried about this looking like a person yet at all. That's not the point. I'm not worried about that. I've just got to figure out where things are going. I'm making this too long, so stop it right about there. Okay. Okay, so you can see I'm not worried about all these crazy lines. I'm just going to make sure that I get the basic shape of the muscles and all the joints lined up where they should be. And then I can fidget with this and make sure that it's going in the direction that I want it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tracing paper, I'm going to lay it over my sketch. Now remember, this is a sketch. This is not part of the finished drawing, so you don't need to freak out if it's not looking exactly the way you want yet. I'm going to carefully just go over only the lines I want to keep. So yes, I'm like tracing my own drawing. And you may simplify your drawings. You do not have to draw every tiny thing that you see in the photograph. I'm not trying to make this project become a nightmare for you, especially since this is the very first introduction we've had to figure drawing. All right. Now take my tracing paper and add the graphite. You could also use a graphite transfer paper, and you see how just the rubbing pressed the drawing onto the table. And I can decide, do I want to angle it back? This is also the time to look and see, ooh, I see some major mistakes. Okay, so I'm noticing things that I didn't notice before, and now is the time to change it before it's too late. Maybe it's because of the angle I'm sitting here, because I'm trying to stay out of the view of the camera. but when I held this up and looked at it, I could tell this leg is way too short. Way too short, like dramatically too short. And I didn't notice because I am sitting at such an odd angle at the table here right now. All right, so the human body, when someone bends their head comes right about to their knee. Okay, so if I'm looking at from her waist to her knee, should be the same distance from her head to her knee, and it is not. All right, this leg needs to be way bigger. So I'm actually going to erase that. Her knee needs to be more like down here. That thigh probably needs to be a little bigger compared to that one. All right, we're probably more in the line of this. Something like that. Let's see if that feels more right. I picked a tough one. Okay. I'm trying to do this quickly and I'm trying to talk about it at the same time. And that's not an easy thing to do. So don't judge my drawing skills off of this little demo. Okay, you can see how it takes time. This is illustrating my point very well. I'm going to look at it backwards. Let's see if I notice any other mistakes. Okay, we're getting there. That's a little closer to looking more realistic. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, now that paper got messed up. Okay, so still not perfect, but good enough for this demo right now. Now I will take my 2B, nope, that's not a 2B, my 2B pencil, and I will go over those lines again. And this is another chance to adjust things and change it. All right. And again, this is not the detailed portion of the drawing. This is the basic outline. So I know where I want to put things on the final drawing paper. And the reason we got all of this practice sketching done this way first is so that we don't have tons of eraser marks and all kinds of crazy sketch lines and mistakes like making the leg drastically too short and then noticing your mistake and then having to go back and erase. We have taken care of all of that during the planning phase and the sketching phase. All right, let's see how that transferred. There we go. Now hang on to this. If you do a drawing you really like, you can always trace it again or use it for another project. That has saved me a couple times in the past. Right, so now this is not a finished drawing by any means, okay? And I don't want to necessarily see the texture of the way it transferred. All right, so I'm going to now use my eraser. I prefer to use a kneaded eraser. I just don't have one at the moment. It's still in a wrapper. I don't want to mess with that. But the kneaded eraser, here's what it looks like. Those kneaded erasers, you can press and pull graphite off without it smearing. So with using this, it is smearing a bit. I don't like that. I didn't want smudges. The kneaded eraser won't leave smudges. Okay, so I'm going to erase that so I can just barely see it. All right, and we went through all of that trouble so that I can now begin the real drawing. All right, so I have a little ghost drawing there that only I can really see. And now we can begin the final drawing, which I'm not going to try to tackle right now.